Hello and welcome to Comedy in a Nutshell, the podcast that asks a single profound question. What does comedy mean to those who create it? It's a thoughtful look at humour's power to connect, console and occasionally confuse through the voices of those who live it on stage. Smart, silly and occasionally awkward, just like comedy itself. I'm the comedy nerd who's seen more than 2,000 different comedians perform live comedy, and you can find out more about my journey in comedy fandom on my website, thecomedynerd.com. Please also take a moment to like, subscribe, rate, review, and share the podcast. Thank you. My guest this episode is an author, an actor, a podcaster, a writer for TV and radio, and a multi-award-winning stand-up comedian. With her social media achieving millions of views, she now has a brand new YouTube series with Dr. Ollie Double from her alma mater, the University of Kent. It's comedian Laura Lexx. So, do you remember growing up that comedy was an influence on you back then?
Yeah, my dad used to watch comedy. Like, I vaguely remember things like Live from the Comedy Store and Live at Jongleurs being on TV when I was young. And then I know, like, Billy Connolly was a big thing that my parents, they would listen to him. And then my parents had a lot of Eddie Izzard cassettes. We definitely had Glorious on cassette. And me and my older sister used to, I can still quote huge parts of that, like verbatim. And then I think for my 17th birthday, my sister got me tickets to see him at the Birmingham NEC. Yeah, so I think like that sort of comedy, that's the stand-up I really remember being around when I was younger. I don't recall if my parents used to go out to comedy, but I expect they did. But it was all that like classic TV sort of stuff that was just on terrestrial, you know, because TV was so much smaller back then. So you just watched what was on. Yeah.
Did you feel like it was a big influence on what you were going to do with your life? Did you think comedy is a thing for me sooner rather than later, or did you come to it much later on?
I came to it pretty early, but by accident, really. I don't think I would ever have watched comedy as a kid thinking that was a thing I was going to do. I'm not sure I sort of knew it was a job particularly. I don't know about that. I think I just loved it. But then I came to it because I wanted to be an actress and I wanted to do acting. So I'd gone to university and done a drama degree. And the university I was at did a 3-year course with a 4th-year specialism in, you know, a part of theatre or drama in some way. And one of them was stand-up comedy, which by the time I hit my 4th year, the other specialism I was interested in had been taken off the roster of options. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll do comedy. I'd really enjoyed a couple of modules through the 3 years that had been on popular performance and like the history of variety and vaudeville and stuff. And I was like, cool, stand-up. I'll do the stand-up. And then I just like loved it, really. I got the bug for it. There was... most of the course was like learning the history and the sociology and the neurology and all of that sort of element of it. But there was a practical element where you had to do like field research, where you had to go and do gigs in order to understand what was shaping how the gigs went and how they worked and what affected your performance and stuff. So it wasn't so much like learning how to be a comedian as learning what goes into comedy.
Right.
And yeah, you had to go and do a load of gigs and put together a portfolio. And so by having to do that portfolio, I had to sort of get on the open mic circuit and sort of reached out for that. And I really enjoyed it. I loved it. And then it went pretty well. Like in that first year, I got to the finals of some competitions and I was like, oh, okay, this is going all right. And I think in the back of my head, I sort of thought I probably still want to be an actress. But by then I was like, old enough to realize like if you're a good enough comedian they just give you acting jobs, you know, like you always see comedians in stuff. And also I'd left uni and then I moved to London and acting was really hard to get into. It's such a closed world. You have to have an agent and they have to get you auditions, and then the auditions have to go well in order to do acting. Whereas stand-up just seemed much more accessible. You could just get on an open mic night and you could just do it. And then the more friends you made at open mic nights, the more other comics were running gigs and you'd go and do their gigs and all that stuff. And so it felt like acting was probably still on the back burner, but actually comedy seemed like something I could actually do now instead of waiting.
Yeah. So you mentioned about then looking at comedy from like the theoretical side, but then having to do this module and jump on the open mic circuit. So going out and doing those first few faltering steps on the stage in terms of doing stand-up, did it align with your expectations? Did it meet the theory, or did you encounter surprises?
I've always felt like the theory just goes out of your head the second you're actually doing it. I think the theory was really interesting for like, you could tell whether the room was right. You know, you could go like, okay, I'm a little bit more aware. I think that the best gigs I've had have been in small basement rooms with a low ceiling and packed crowd. And the course was kind of about going, why does that make a difference? Why does the brightness in the room make something funnier? Why is it funnier if the room is full of people and they're all packed together? Why is it less of a good gig if there's exactly the same amount of people, but they sit in the back 3 rows as opposed to the front 3 rows? And it was about analyzing what about human behavior and stuff makes those rules work for comedy. Like, what is it about comedy that's so ephemeral that it needs all these precise little things in order to make it work? Because I think the general public want to believe that comedy's bulletproof, you know, that like, oh, if you're funny, mate. You like, you make anyone laugh, do it. And that's not true at all. Comedy's incredibly fragile, and needs exactly the right things. But I don't think I've ever sort of been stood on the stage thinking, well, I know all about how long to pause because I've studied it, you know, and that is all trial and error. But in the writing of things, you are, you know, an aware writer. Not that you have to do a course for it, but the more you write, the more you realize the little basics, like the rule of 3. If you're going to give a list, probably a list of 3 seems to have a rhythm that we enjoy. And structuring your jokes so that you've got the last piece of the sort of information is your last word, and then you can sort of go silent and let the laugh happen in a silence that you're not still talking into. So yeah, all things like that. But I don't know, I feel like it's so instinctual in the moment, and there's so little actual conscious thinking time that really when you're performing, you're just going on your gut.
Yeah. That thing you're saying there about writing, and you've written extensively for radio, television, things like The Now Show. Have I got news for you, to name just a couple? If you're writing for other people, how do you differentiate between your voice and their voice? Do you write things that you say, well, I wouldn't say that, but someone else would? Or do you write things for others and then think, well, actually, I'm going to keep that because that works for me?
I'm not sure I've ever kept anything that I've written for anybody else. I think sometimes you could. When I've written for Have I Got News for You, I think I've often written when Victoria Coren Mitchell is hosting. And I think there's a lot that I would write for her that I'm like, I could fudge that back into my voice. Like I am writing it with her in mind. But I think that's one of the joyous things about writing for other people. So I do coaching of individuals, like newer stand-ups, and I like work with them on their material and getting it up. It's really fun to write for someone else because there are a lot of jokes that you're like, I can do the wordplay of that, but it will be inauthentic coming from me. Or like if I'm working with a comedian that has a completely different background, like is from a different country or a different religion, or I don't know, has a different body to me and wants to talk about that, like suddenly you've got this whole world of joke mechanics that I wouldn't be able to tell that joke because it just, you'd be like, what are you talking about? You're what? But you know, you can suddenly like apply the games that you play on jokes to things for other people. And I think that's really fun.
Yeah.
Like I'm working with somebody at the moment and her persona is really different to mine. So you can come up with some really esoteric stuff that you're like, yeah, oh, this would really work. And it would do like, this would be, you can almost write the joke twice. You can go, this is how I would tell it. But I think for you, it's this way round and it's like this. And you sort of, you can kind of, make it work in their voice. I love writing for other people. I think it's really fun because it's like a little puzzle game. It's you're so used to your own way of thinking and your own voice and blah, blah, blah. And then you sit down with somebody else's and it's like they've done all the hard work of cultivating the ground and coming up with some fresh stuff. And then all you've got to do is organize it into the correct patterns and shape it. So it's really fun.
Did you go in, or do you find people go in now with an idea more of the kind of comedian that they want to be? Did you know who you wanted to be when you started out?
I think I wanted to be then Eddie Izzard, now Susie Izzard. I think that's what I wanted to be. I always just love her ability to, I don't even know, be joyous, just be so mischievous and enjoying the moment. And the material is off the wall, but political and emotional. Like that bit in Glorious where she stops and just goes, talking about Princess Diana, and then goes, my mum died when I was 8 and my brother was 6. No one gave a shit. And then bam, we're back into giraffes loping about and stuff like that. And that like mind-blowing thing of you can put a point in. It doesn't have to be a 20-minute bit building up to a load of emotion and savagery. You can just kind of go, we're all having a good time. Wait, that's a bit weird. And okay, never mind. Like blah, blah, blah. I think I like that sort of comedy that tries not to be preaching the point for too long, but just like, we're having a good time, but I'm going to throw a thing in that hopefully at some point tomorrow you'll go, yeah, wait, what? And have a think about it on your own. But I know when I started, I was just doing anything to make people laugh. Like, I think for me, like comics now seem to have such a better idea of their voice and themselves. Like I hosted the So You Think You're Funny final this summer, and all of those finalists were incredible. They just had such brilliant 5 minutes. It was really quite intimidating. You're just like, wow, you're good. You've only been going 8 months or whatever. You're brilliant. But I think when I started, I've been doing a couple of years of improv comedy with like the Drama Society at uni, like, you know, performing in our local union. So I was quite comfortable on stage, but I was really bad at actually writing material and sitting down and learning it. So it was all quite improvised and flappy and bits here and there and reaching out to the crowd because I was way more comfortable being on stage than I was writing. So I think in some ways that's quite different to how a lot of comics start, because I think if you don't have the stage time opportunities like I did young, then you start and you're writing and writing, but you haven't got an outlet for it. And then you take all that writing to the stage as a like maybe stand-ups where I put all this funny that has been building up. Yeah. Whereas I think I had an outlet before I had anything to say.
And you said about initially wanting to just go out there and have fun, but after years of being a comedian and having a career, is it still fun? Do you still get the joy out of it? Or is it are you like jaded now?
No, I love it. I love stand-up. And I think the longer that I do stand-up, the more I love it. The more I just think there's something really special about stand-up. Like if I'm totally honest with you, Mark, I'm very hungover right now because last night I filmed we call them specials now, don't we? I filmed my comedy special. It's not a special. It's just a show. It was just a show. It's a special show, but it's just a show. I filmed my show last night and I toured it last autumn, took it to New Zealand in May, took it to Edinburgh in August. And then like, we need to put it to bed now so I can write the next one. So we filmed it last night and it was just epic. It just felt incredible. And I get quite bored of my stuff pretty quickly. And by the end of the Edinburgh run, I was just a bit like, oh, bored of doing this show. And then doing it last night and watching people enjoy it and get something out of it. And you go, no, this is good. Like this has got something in it. And for me, like that joy of the simplicity of what stand-up actually is, which is just one person saying stuff to someone else, but the fireworks that go off in people's heads because their imagination is imagining it. Like I actually have a bit in the show where I talk about how much I love comedy because, if you're talking to 200 people, no one person's imagining is the same. And what I'm imagining when I'm describing it isn't the same. And so you get like this realm of realities in that room of I'll be saying something about my childhood and there's a truth in it that rings with a lot of other people's childhoods, but they're all imagining different childhoods. And I think the efficiency of stand-up to have like one joke produce that much imagination with no props, no acting out, like I think it's an incredible art form. It still makes me feel amazing when I'm on stage. I have terrible anxiety and I real like scatter thoughts and find it very hard to focus a lot of the time. And stand up just makes me concentrate because it's so all consuming to be on that stage telling the show, thinking about the next bit, judging how it went, checking the audience are all right, blah 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 blah, that it uses your whole brain, and I think it's amazing.
Yeah. So I was at your show in Edinburgh, Slinky,
Thanks.
in a packed out room, of course. And I was there with a rising comedian who absolutely couldn't contain their joy for the hour. So do you still watch comedy the same way? Is it still entertaining for you? Or are you one of these people who sits there, arms folded, nodding along and saying, I like what you did there?
I think I don't watch it exactly the same anymore because a lot of the time you can unfortunately see the cracks in bits, or like you are looking at it with an analytical eye of what would I have done? What would I do differently? But then every now and again, there is a comic that makes you forget that, and you are just enjoying their brand of whatever. I don't think I'm sit there with their arms folded going, come on, impress me. I think I'm like, I'm ready to be delighted. But I think, what do I think? Like, I don't go and see as much of it as I should because I'm always doing it. And I think, like, if I gig probably, what do I do? Probably average of about 5 or 6 gigs a week. So I'm just, by being at work, seeing probably 12 to 15 comedians a week. So the thought of then going to see comedy on my night off is like, or if I sit down and put the telly on, about the last thing I want to do is watch somebody's special, and you know, you're done by then. But I did go in Edinburgh. I only saw a couple of things. I saw Danny Ward and Alice Fraser.
Yeah.
And when I do get round to doing that, like especially with an Edinburgh show or something like that, you do feel completely invigorated, because both of those, they had shows this year that were so meticulous and so painstakingly created and written and delivered and unapologetic in their doggedness of being who they are and how niche those shows were. And I think that did make me remember, like, oh, you can completely be yourself as a comedian, especially in Edinburgh, because on the circuit, obviously your job is to do your best to entertain whoever gets put in front of you. You know, you drive to Reading Town Hall and it's those people's night out, and you know, you do what you do, but I feel a responsibility to make it worth their while, because they've got a babysitter and come out and, you know, done whatever. But when you do your own shows, you can be a little bit more on your own terms, and you can go, well, actually, you know, you've taken a punt on me and this is me, and you can be a bit more extreme. And watching Alice and Danny, I just sort of felt a bit like recharged in the creativity that's possible in a solo show. So I think I often, like, maybe in the show I'm not as like vocally laughy as a non-comedian would be, but I think it sparks inspiration and joy and happiness in a different way, like watching people do their thing.
Yeah. And you talked there about being able to be yourself doing those hours. How much of yourself is in that hour, and how much of it is a character of you? Do you find yourself doing an exaggerated version, or are you trying to be completely open and honest in that hour?
I think it's not a character. The expression of everything is exaggerated, but it is an exaggeration of honesty. I try quite hard not to do anything on stage that I wouldn't be able to justify off stage. Just because you have to live with yourself, you know? I don't want to like put something out that I'm not proud of. But then what you're proud of and what you think and feel changes all the time. Like even with Slinky. Slinky's a show about having finally had a kid after a long time waiting and sort of being honest about how that's gone for the first couple of years of it. And I've gone through big ups and downs with how I feel about that show, of feeling guilt. Like, you know, should I moan about my kid? She's going to see this one day. And then kind of coming back around and going, everybody moans about their kids. You have to. It's part of being a parent. Yes, she'll see it one day and she'll understand it on another day. And like that is what you are. Like I don't think I feel the same about anything from one moment to the next, let alone like staying solidly on my feelings about one thing. So the show, it's a big expression of honesty, but the bigness gives it an element of caricature, because I think what you're saying by exaggerating it is this is an example. It's not my everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You also mentioned about your autumn tour last year for Slinky, and it's another question really about perception, because it's about what I'm interested in is when you're touring around different parts of the UK or abroad, how much does your comedy change? How much do you adapt to different audiences, different cultures, and how much does the way they see you change, how the way that your comedy is perceived, do you think?
Yeah, I think it changes. It changes a lot about how I feel about it. I think, I don't know how much it changes the external output. I think you'd have to get an external eye on that. But I certainly feel like it really changes what you're doing. Like when I was touring Slinky in the UK, it was really exciting because there was an anticipation about it, because that was my first proper tour. I was supposed to tour in 2020 and then obviously COVID. So did that tour online from this very office. And then wrote a couple of books and had a kid, so couldn't tour for a few years. So then 2024 was the first time I'd like, right, okay, I've got time to get back out on the road and I've got a show and let's go. Yeah. So there was a real sense of excitement for a lot of it. And then when I took Slinky to New Zealand, there it was a bit more of being a curiosity, because I've never been to New Zealand before. I don't have a big following in New Zealand. So people coming to that show, they weren't going, finally, we've waited ages for her to come to Leeds. They were going, who's this then? I've heard good things. I don't know. British comic. I've seen a few clips on video. So you're sort of introducing yourself in a way and that kind of thing. And then like last night doing it back in my hometown to film it, there's a sense that the audience are not just enjoying the show, but they're enjoying the success a little bit. They're proud of, like, you know, like, yeah, we followed you, we like you. Like somebody that buys a ticket to see your filming, they've got a vested interest. So there's a sense that everything you're saying, we understand the wider context of that. Actually, this is a bit of a celebration to be putting this down on film and like saying goodbye to it. So it adds a different spark and a different nuance to the performance.
Yeah.
But like the material doesn't change.
Sure.
But just something in it's definitely the way I feel about the show or the delivery or the presentation, like it does alter a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think that's what I like about stand-up. I like that you can tweak it. Like I have a joke, I have a pair of jokes in the show. One of them, the first one, so I'm talking about, you know, the difference between having a dog and a kid. And then I say like the dog will be dead in a decade and I'll be free. And genuinely in Edinburgh, with that sort of more arty audience that, you know, what was my show on about 4:00, that would get every time. Where when I'm doing it in the evenings and everybody's had a glass of wine, it gets like, that's dark, and then like a laugh. So I got really used to saying after that joke, okay, right, you've not enjoyed that one particularly. There's another one coming up in about 3 minutes that you are going to hate. And then there's a like darker joke a couple of minutes later that's like the sister joke to that one. And then when I got back, I did the show, last night, or I've done it in a couple of previews, like building up to filming it last night. And suddenly that joke's not getting that. And my muscle memory went to go, right, you didn't like that one. And instead I was sitting there going, oh, wow, you really there's another joke coming up that you are going to love in a minute. Like, you know, and so I think like those little changes, it's not like the fundamental concept of the show changes, but those little bits change and you can kind of, you know, have a slight play in the mortar between the jokes.
Yeah. And of course, we've talked about Fringe a little bit in Edinburgh. So how much has changed since you were doing AAA to now in that time? How much has the festival changed? How much has your relationship with it changed? And how do you react to or engage with the festival as a whole?
So I think the festival in some ways is still exactly the same, like roiling beast. It's still sort of beautiful, messy. Anyone can be there, get a room, stick some chairs in it, do a show, try and beg an audience to come. I think in some ways those big elements, someone will smash it and have a brilliant sellout run with 5 stars everywhere. And some people will struggle to get 3 people to come in and sit and watch a show that is incredible. So in some ways it's exactly the same. In some ways it's really different because it has got so expensive to be there. From an audience's perspective, hotels have gone up, ticket prices have shuffled up. From a comedian's perspective, accommodation is now just, for a lot of people, impossible. A lot of people just can't afford to be there. I can't afford to be there for the whole month. The money you actually make, you're kind of happy to break even. And who the hell can afford to break even on a month? You have to pay your mortgage back home. Like it's mad. So the festival, you know, yeah, it's odd. My relationships changed with it massively. I did every year at the festival, I think, except one from 2009 to 2019. And it used to like eat up my year and my confidence and my self-esteem, because it felt like the judgment on you as to whether you were going to be one of the bright one things or whether you were going to slog it out. And it felt like I was working a lot of my year to get a show ready for Edinburgh, and then you'd show it off at Edinburgh, you'd work really, really hard, and then sometimes that would pay off, and sometimes you'd have just as good a show and you'd come home from Edinburgh into absolute radio silence. And why did I just do that? And I think I took a big break. I didn't go from 2019 until this year, 2025. And going back this year, I just felt like I couldn't hear a lot of that worried noise that I used to really care about. I sort of thought, like, I am a good comic. I don't need anyone to tell me I'm a good comic. I'm all right. And I think in taking a show that was already toured and had already been shown off at a festival and stuff like that, I wasn't there going, is this good? Could you review me so I can tell people this is good? I was confident in the show, and I felt like how you're probably always supposed to feel there, which is just absolute confidence in what you've got, and come and see it because it'll be a good hour, not sort of begging for approval. So that felt nice. I think that just comes with being older and understanding now that the longevity of this career is not it's not make or break in 1 year, and if it all goes wrong, you'll never work again in this town or whatnot. It's just keep being relentlessly good and you'll be all right.
Yeah. What about the weight of the debut? Were you conscious of this idea that suddenly you're setting out your stall and introducing yourself to the industry, saying, I'm making my debut, I've got one shot at getting an award for Best Newcomer? Were you aware of that weight, that pressure, or did you sort of shrug it off?
I don't think I didn't expect ever to get anything like Newcomer. I think I sort of knew that wasn't really going to happen for me. I think I more wanted to get. I remember I deliberately did my debut the same year I got married so that I couldn't get too obsessive over either of them. I was like, I don't want the wedding to be just, I don't want to go bridezilla, and I don't want to go debutzilla. I did them both in that same year so that they would stay pegged down a bit by each other. I think I was just more excited about having all that time to put a full length show together, like you start out and you're doing 5-minute sets, and 5s are really hard. And then you're doing 7-minute sets, and then like maybe 10s, the odd 15 might creep into your life. And I think at the point I did my debut, I was probably doing mainly 20-minute sets. But the difference between doing 20 minutes and doing an hour is vast. And suddenly you've got all of this space to play with these bigger, different ideas. And I think the common thing to do with your debut is you take all of the 20s that you've had and you sew them together into the best hour that you can jog together. You take all your best material. And I deliberately didn't do that with my debut. I wrote a specific show to be a show. And I was like, I don't want to do my 20 here. I do my 20 all year. I want to do something different. And so I think I sort of knew, well, I'm not going to get Newcomer because everybody else is hiring directors and meticulously like sifting their best stuff together, whereas I wanted to write a show. Yeah. So I didn't find that bothered me too much. The more I did Edinburgh, the more like best show would creep into my head. I know the year I did Trying, which was 2018, that show went really, really well. It was incredibly well reviewed. It was a sellout. And I think I got about halfway through that run and went, do you know what? this could get nominated. Like, why not me? Why wouldn't this? And then when that didn't, I think I sort of thought, if that show didn't get nominated, I'll never get nominated, because that was the most Edinburgh thing I think I'll ever produce. And it was brilliant. And so after that, I sort of just think, okay, I'm making things I really love, and they're not what gets nominated. So I think I just don't want to make the sort of thing that gets nominated, because I clearly don't. I think the trick to not feeling weird and like upset, because I do think that trying year when it didn't get nominated, I think I felt a bit like, oh, maybe I'm not very good. And then like that's so silly, because then you go and see something that you love and that didn't get nominated either. And you're just like, oh, that was brilliant though. And we all laugh from start to finish, but that's not nominated either. And then you sort of start to feel the downside to even making comedy a competition or having like nominations and trying to value subjectivity. Yeah. So I think all you can do is make stuff that you're really proud of. Which is, I did sort of say for a while, I was like, I'm worried about going back to Edinburgh, because I've kind of had everything I can have out of Edinburgh except a nomination. And I wouldn't want to go back fishing for that. Like, I'd feel like it was a little bit on my head, which is partly what shaped like going back this year and doing a run that I was like, I don't think I'm doing a long enough run that I'm eligible. So that feels really nice to go back and just not have any of that noise in the back of your head. Because however much you want to say, oh, I don't care about stuff like that, you do. Of course you do, because you want to be well thought of. So it's really hard to switch it off subconsciously, you know. But I think making a show that you're like, I'm pretty sure I love this show no matter what happens, that can help in relieving that pressure.
Yeah. Well, given what you just said, I mean, how do you feel about awards and competitions, things like So You Think You're Funny and these accolades? Is it just something to put on a future poster, or does it have some greater stock in it?
I don't love them. I don't love awards and meriting that sort of stuff. I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because I do think it's amazing to celebrate someone's success. Like Madeleine Brettingham, who won So You Think You're Funny. She's phenomenal. She was so good. So good. And I don't want to not celebrate her, but it's just I've been that other comic in that competition so many times, where all 10 of those finalists this year went out and absolutely smashed that gig. They played to a 400-seater room and killed it within a year of starting stand-up comedy. And then because you don't win, you have a dismal feeling about a night that should have been a shining success. If that gig hadn't been a competition, every single one of them would have left on top of the world going, I slayed that room. But then the second you add an element of, oh, I lost or I didn't win, you don't feel as good. So it's beautiful. Like Karen and Katie that run So You Think You're Funny with Julia Chamberlain, I love that they want to celebrate comics. And I absolutely I don't know how, though, you celebrate brilliant comics without like making other just as brilliant comics feel a little bit sad. And I think awards are really nice. Like they do. I don't know. I guess the way to do it is to have an award. So like with the Edinburgh Comedy Award, you sort of know what type of show is going to win that a little bit, don't you? You sort of know what the tastes are for the Edinburgh Comedy Award. So maybe if you look at the history of Edinburgh Comedy Awards and go, well, I've liked all of those, then that award is a good indicator of what you're going to like in a show. So then it's a good thing. But maybe there just need to be more like genres of awards so that you can... Oh, but then there's just more things to lose, aren't there? I don't know. I love the idea of celebrating people, but I do think that comedians, we're so thin-skinned and insecure and rubbish that the second there is that competition, we're quick to assume we must be absolutely terrible at what we do.
Madeleine Brettingham, I saw her do a couple of spots last year, and then she did a work in progress at the Leicester Festival in February.
Yeah.
I said, before this year is out, she's going to be making waves and it's going to have a lot of attention on her.
Yeah.
So then when we got to Fringe and she won So You Think You're Funny, I very smugly was texting her going, see, I know what I'm talking about.
Told you. You've got a good eye. She's brilliant. She was really brilliant.
Fantastic. What about your comfort zone then? Because we've talked about you being a writer, we've talked about you performing hour-long shows. You've hosted, you've done radio, you've done television, writing and performing. Where are you happiest? Is it in the writing? Is it in performing an hour? Or do you enjoy a spot on a bill?
It's definitely performing.
Mm-hmm.
Performing, definitely. And I think I like a mix of an hour or doing a spot or hosting. I like, if I do any of those ones too much, they feel a bit formulaic, but I love a mix of everything. That's the best. Like the ideal week would be like, a couple of hour shows, host a show and do a couple of 20s, like, like really mix it up. And I find if I'm hosting too much, then all the bigger ideas that I've been having that are like bigger set pieces, I don't get those out and about and try them out. But if I'm doing too many 20s, then the 20s feels a bit fixed in its way. Mm-hmm. And when you're doing an hour too often, like sometimes the thought of like, oh God, here we go. I've got to wind up for this hour. It's a big undertaking and I've got to like, okay, let's go, Whereas I think when you're doing all of them, you realize all the different vibes that stand-up can have. And it's fun. It's fun to play different games and be a different version. Like when I'm hosting, I'm a bit more high status and a bit more in charge of the room. When I'm doing a 20, it's sort of a bit more storytelling and I'm all over the place. And then when I'm doing an hour, it's a bit more open and a bit more vulnerable. Like you're doing stuff in an hour that I would never host a show with because it's too weird. But I like a mixture. It's definitely performing over writing, but I do like a mixture of all the different performance things. Yeah.
How much does improv play a part in what you do between the hour? I mean, obviously, as an MC, you're very much in the room and very much reacting to things happening in the room. So I'm assuming, therefore, that improv is a higher proportion of the game. But how much is it in your own writing and your own hour?
Huge amount. I'd say about 70% of my stuff is written on stage. Mm-hmm. Where I'm just messing about and then a line will come out and I go, I'll keep that. Like change that, alter that. I do that on stage and then I record what I do and listen back to it and write it down and then like develop it on paper later on. Mm-hmm. But it would be very rare for me. Actually, probably Leicester Festival is about the only place you'd probably see me with a piece of paper literally trying stuff out for the first time that I've written down and then had a go at. I do tend to sort of write a show for Leicester that is the beginnings of whatever the new thing I'm working on. And that will be quite paper saying it out loud. But it makes me uncomfortable doing that. I don't like performing like that. I don't like looking at a paper and then delivering it out because it feels too prepared. It feels like it's like spoiling the magic a little bit to go, this isn't just coming out of my head and heart. This is like, an idea I've had that I wanted to tell you about. But you have to do it. You do have to write. But I prefer, if I'm doing a 10-minute spot of new stuff, I prefer to like have a vague idea of like, I think I'm going to talk about that, waffle on and then listen to that back and like boil down what was good. And, out of 10 minutes, you might get 2 or 3 jokes and then work from there.
Yeah. Well, what about podcasting then? Because obviously there's Lexx Education.
Yeah.
Fantastic show. And also you've got the new show, Comedy Bureau with Dr. Oliver Double. Tell me about the new show, but also tell me about this academia side of you, returning again for, the theory and how it relates to the practical and your input as a comic.
So the Comedy Bureau is basically me being the nerdiest version of my comedy self. So like I told you, I studied it at uni. And then I've been a comedian since I was 22. Is that right? 23, something like that. Mm-hmm. And so it's all I've ever wanted to do. And I didn't walk out of uni to be a full-time comic. Obviously I had a job for a little bit, but I only ever had day jobs that were like 9 to 5 in the office, shut the computer, leave, go and do what I want to do. I never had a passion job other than comedy. And so I can't remember exactly what the call out was, but there was some email that got forwarded of, a producer's looking for comedians and with a background in, it was something like nursing or something like that to do X, Y, or Z. And I just was like, I'm a comedian with a background in comedy. because I love comedy. And I feel like whenever PR's going on or whenever somebody's looking for an interesting comic, they're always like, this comic's so interesting because they've got this background and they talk about their history of X and Y. And I was like, God, I don't have any of that because all I've ever done is comedy and this is what I love. And then I sort of went like, well, why aren't you leaning into that a little bit, you idiot? Like, how many other comedians have studied it to the extent that you have? Like, but I think I was a bit shy and nervous about doing that because I think the fallacy with comedy is that we're all, you know, we wake up at 5 p.m. every day, stagger down to the local basement, you know, take a load of drugs and then rattle out 20 perfect minutes and then stagger home. I think people want to believe comedians don't try or put any effort in, that it just is natural. So I think I never wanted to say, oh, I've studied it and I find the academia of it interesting because God, is there anything more off-putting than going to see like a, you know, I didn't think anybody would want that. But I reached out to Ollie Double, who taught me at university and who is a doctor of the history of popular performance. And he sort of still engages in research and lectures at the University of Kent. And I said to him, like, I want to make this podcast and YouTube series. And I want it to be halfway between like Comedy in a Nutshell, what you're doing now, like comedians sort of chewing the fat, halfway between that and halfway between The Rest is History. Like I want it to have a researched element to it. I want it to be more than just people saying what they think and feel. I want it to be, well, actually, here's the history of that. You know, here's how this went down.
Yeah.
So I said, like, I want to do things like who was the first stand-up comedian? And then we will explore that concept, like where did stand-up come from and who were the first people doing it and how did it evolve? And I want to do an episode called Is Woke Killing Comedy? Like, you know, as soon as you tell someone you work in comedy, oh, you can't say anything to those guys. And as a comedian, I'm like, yes, you can. You've never been freer, like on stage to say what you like in this country. I don't know what the hell America's up to, but they need to be careful. Like, you know, you could say what you like on a stage. There's absolutely nobody policing you, like, you know, yet at the moment. So I was like, I want to do an episode on like Lenny Bruce and the censorship laws of the 50s and how actually like this is my favorite fact that we found out in that episode, that back in vaudeville variety times, if you were doing a double act or a sketch, you had to have all scripts approved by the Lord Chancellor's office. So anything you wanted to perform had to be sent off and approved. And anything that was too risque or unapproved of would be crossed out in a blue pencil and sent back to you. And that's where the term a bit of blue comes from. When you say a joke is a bit rude or risque, oh, it's a bit blue, that comes from that pencil that was used in the Lord Chamberlain's office. So I think, like, how can you sit there and say, like, oh, cancel culture's gone too far, when they literally used to say, no, you can't perform that if it wasn't obsequious enough or it was a bit rude, whereas now you can do what you like, and yes, people will spout opinions on it, but you are still at liberty to do it. You just have to cope with your own consequences of people's opinions. So I wanted to do that kind of thing and do episodes that looked at the science of what is laughter. Like I think it's so funny that we love laughing and it's such a human thing, and yet most people have never sat down and gone, what is it? Why do we do it? Like, what's the brain function that makes that happen? Why do we enjoy that feeling of breathing weirdly and saying ha ha? So I got in touch with Ollie and I was like, would you be up for making this? Like, I don't know what your workload's like. Are you in? And he was like, this sounds amazing. Let's do it. And then we developed it from there. And I, you know, my husband was like, you have to do it as a YouTube show. Like, YouTube is the place to put things. And I was like, no, it's not. Podcasts are better. And he was like, trust me, YouTube is where the audience is. It's the fastest growing website or whatever. And I was like, okay, we'll make it as a video thing. And I wanted to do the opposite of like you know, like most podcast videos, it's like lounging about in a studio room and the guys have all got their backwards baseball caps on and a big boom arm and they're all sort of lying back. Yeah, bro. And spouting their opinions. I was like, I want to do the opposite of that. I want to make a set that looks like a little cozy office that's this niche department of two nerdy people that are just wasting their time and everybody else is researching all this stuff. And like, if we didn't keep interrupting them to get meals, they'd forget to eat because they're so busy discussing why why Richard Pryor was such an icon and what he changed about the world, you know. And I wanted that sort of vibe to it, so we kind of went from there and started building it.
Yeah. So that's out this month.
Yeah, 25th of September. Yeah.
It's a weekly show?
Yeah, it's going to come out weekly. The first series is 10 episodes long, so it'll run until mid-November.
So the history, culture and psychology of humour as presented by the curator of the Stand-Up Comedy Archive and Laura Lexx, award-winning comedian.
Yeah. Well, it's really nice because Ollie really knows. Ollie's incredible. He's written several books on stand-up. Like most recently, he's just written the Cambridge Companion to Stand-Up Comedy. And he has all this like academic side to it that's really fun. But then we bring in the fact that I'm a working comedian. So we'll bring in new segments of a show that I'm trying to get to work. Like we did a couple of episodes on comic theory, like incongruity theory and superiority theory and relief theory. And so we brought in sections of my stand-up to see like, well, which category of those does this joke fall in and which does this? And we've done episodes where we're like playing my heckling put down videos and kind of looking at the different types of heckle you get and why certain things work and why these interruptions. So we're trying to mix that academia angle with modern day angle, which I think is really fun.
Yeah. You've got this exciting new series coming up. You've got author credits of your own, as well as all your many accolades, your writing credits, your radio, TV, etc. Is there anything you haven't done yet? Is there objectives in the future that you still got your sights set on?
Yeah. I really want to do a couple more overseas bits and pieces. I really want to go and do the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. I really would love to play Just for Laughs, do Montreal. I think a lot of that stuff that to me is like the comedians' accolades I want to do. I really would love to host Live at the Apollo one day. That's a dream. I got to do it. I got to do a set on it and it was incredible. And I think like I would love to be there hosting it and kind of have graduated to that next level. That would be incredible. I'd like to get the second book that I wrote, Pivot. I originally wrote that as a television show and I would love to get that made. I really would love to get that done. I really want to do Just a Minute. Oh, there's loads I really want to do. There's so much. I want to be on Bake Off. I'd like to write another book. I'd like to do an even bigger tour. That would be amazing. There's loads. There's loads I still want to do. Yeah.
Do you think up to this point that there's one lesson that you've learned that you might teach your rising comedian self or you would impart to other aspiring comedians? One single lesson that you take with you from show to show and into the future?
I think it's to value longevity. I think it's kind of an impressive thing to have. How do I want to phrase this? Okay, without sounding like a complete asshole, I think my career is quite impressive. I'm happy to be 15 years into my career, and I think most comedians like me. And I think while I'm not the flavor of the month, the hot, bright young thing ever, I think I'm well thought of, and that's lovely. And I'm proud that I pay my mortgage every month off the back of a career where 98% of the country have never heard of me, but I'm good enough at what I do that producers trust me and they will book me on my show. My live diary is booked for a year in advance because I'm trusted to do what I do. And that actually it would have been really nice to have a few more shiny wins, you know, or a slightly more stratospheric rise at some point would have been delightful. But actually, what an amazing thing to have been able to just live the life I've wanted to live off the back of my favorite thing in the world to do, and to be quietly good at it is okay and is impressive. And to survive all of the fads and phases, like you watch all of the fashions and whatnot come and go in comedy, and we need comedians that are all like this now, and you watch 5 or 6 comedians get boosted one way, and now we need comedians that are all like this, and you watch a few more people go. And I've never been one of those ones that's been on TV every week. I've had a bit here and there and but through all of those different fads and bits, I've never lost it all, and I'm proud of that.
Yeah. So given that, then, what do you think have so far been the best and worst experiences that you've had in comedy?
Best is, well, Apollo was one of the best days of my life. I loved that. The books were really cool. Things like hosting the Comedy Store for the first time. That was big for me. I love that. I think like the first time I did a gig and the hotel was booked and paid for by the producer, you know, like it wasn't me trying to find the cheapest travel lodge around the corner. It was like, no, this is the accommodation, and it's nice accommodation too. Like, you know, they want you to do that. Being flown out to New Zealand was incredible this year. I was out there for a month, and I have a 3-year-old, and so was like, well, I have to take her with me because her dad is also a comedian, so he was traveling about, and it was easier for her to come with me. And my sister was between jobs, and so I said, like, will you come with me to New Zealand and look after my kid whenever I have to go to a gig, and in exchange I'll take you to New Zealand, and you know, whatever. So me, my sister, her kid, and my kid, we all flew out to New Zealand, and there was a moment on Takapuna Beach where me and my sister swam in the Pacific Ocean for the first time in our lives, and I just thought, this has all come about from jokes and laughing, and it's taken me and the people I love the most in the world to the other side of the world. And that's incredible. Like that's so cool. Yeah. That's a real highlight for me, that like being able to do it with people that I love. I've never had to be surrounded by arseholes. like working with Ollie on the bureau. Ollie's just the most beautiful man. He's so wonderful. And doing Lex Education, like my other podcast, it's been going for over 3 years now. We started it because my stupid brother was leaving Brighton to go and live in Brussels, and I was mad at him for leaving. So I forced him to start a podcast with me so he'd have to talk to me every week. And now 3 years later, we still do it. And I just get to chat to my brother once a week. Like, my job is to have an hour's chat with my brother. That's lovely. Like, all of that stuff where you just think, I never have that Sunday night feeling of worry about what tomorrow is. Like, even on a stressful week or a job you're not that into, there's never that foreboding that I used to get when I had an office job on Sunday night, where you're like, oh God, I'm about to go into 5 days of, oh, I don't want that. Like, how cool to have painstakingly pieced together a life of just, you know, the things you want to do. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Well, I mean, I hate to go in this direction, but what about the other side of the coin? What about the downside?
The downsides is having your self-esteem balanced on minutiae that shifts and changes all the time. Like that I find really hard, because it's a self problem. It like last night. So we're sitting there, we're having a bottle of wine, celebrating that the special's just been on, but Live at the Apollo is being filmed this week. And so like people are chatting, like some of the comics that were at the show have been to see recordings and blah, blah, blah. And suddenly there's that element of, oh, I didn't get it this year. Oh, that's like, God, I really want to do. And suddenly you did this hour show and it went beautifully and you've recorded it. And 2 minutes ago, you were super proud of everything you just recorded and you couldn't wait for the special to come out and people were going to see it and love you. And then the next minute, oh no, I must be really bad at this because like 25 more comics did Live at the Apollo this year and I didn't do it this year. So what did I do wrong? Why? Oh, I thought it went well when I did it. Why have I not done it again? Blah, 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 blah. That is the hardest thing for me about comedy, that like you will say something lovely and you've got these books and, you know, you've written these books. And in the back of my mind, I'm going, yeah, I got 2 book deals, but the last one came out in 2022 and I haven't been offered another book deal since. Like, I might never write another book. And blah, blah, blah. Didn't sell as well as like Richard Osman's books. It's not like there's a film going. That is impossible. Like you cannot hang on to the happiness permanently. You have to cope all the time with trying to get a sense of whether you're okay on shifting sand, and it's infuriating not to just be like, just shut up and be grateful, you idiot. Oh, that and the money hasn't gone up since about 1998. That's tough. Still doing gigs for the same fee I was doing them for 15 years ago. That's not okay.
Well, for those who want to rise up and support a fantastic comedian, how can people find out all about you and where they can come and see you performing?
You can. My website tries to have everything you could ever want in, and the best thing to do to find me is to join my mailing list. So we go to lauralexx.co.uk and join the mailing list. Then we are not subject to algorithms for you to find out what I'm getting up to. I can just write to you and tell you. So that's great. I am on Instagram is probably where I am the most, at Lex Laura. I am also on Facebook. Sometimes I'm on TikTok, but it's a lot of work, isn't it? And I feel like it's for the kids. I don't know about that one. But yeah, Comedy Bureau will be out on YouTube from the 25th of September. And it's also available as a podcast, and Lex Education drops every Monday. So if you want some joy in your ears, if you just want two siblings rowing heartily about GCSE science, then listen to Lex Education.
So my final question then, Laura, how would you sum up comedy in a nutshell?
Imagine a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that everybody listening just imagined a different nutshell, that sums up comedy to me.
Oh, you leave it there? Okay. So.
Yeah, that's it. Somebody says something and everybody imagines a different thing, and it just makes us all chuckle. That's comedy for me.
Yeah. Laura, thank you so much for being my guest. It's been a genuine pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you.